The candle flickered in the window of the weathered cabin, a solitary flame against the vast Montana darkness. Eliza Morrison struck the match with trembling fingers, as she had every night for the past 3 months. The ritual had become sacred. Light the candle at sunset, whisper a prayer, and wait for morning to bring nothing but another empty day. "Mama's gone to fetch water," she whispered to the flame, though no one was there to hear. At 22, Eliza had become both daughter and mother to this lonely homestead, ever since the fever took her father last spring. Her mother had lasted only 6 weeks longer, grief finishing what illness had started. Now the widow's daughter kept vigil alone, the candle her only companion in the encroaching wilderness. Before we continue with Eliza's story, I want to ask you something important. If you're enjoying this tale of hope and resilience in the Old West, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. It truly means the world to us and motivates us to bring you more quality stories like this one. I'd also love to know, where are you listening from right now? Leave a comment and let me know. The sound of hooves on hard earth made her freeze. Visitors were rare this far from town and rarely welcome. She reached for her father's old rifle, hands steadier now with purpose, and peered through the gap in the door. A lone rider approached, silhouetted against the dying light. He sat tall in the saddle, moving with the easy confidence of a man who'd spent more nights under stars than roofs. As he drew closer, she could make out the details: worn leather chaps, a hat pulled low, and shoulders broad enough to block out the sunset behind him. He stopped 20 feet from the cabin, raising both hands to show they were empty. "Evening, ma'am. Don't mean to startle you. Name's Cole Bridger. My horse threw a shoe about 2 miles back. Saw your light and hoped I might water him at your well, if you'll allow it." His voice carried the rough melody of Texas, each word measured and respectful. Eliza kept the rifle visible, but lowered it slightly. "Water's free to all who ask politely," she called back. "Well's around the side." Cole dismounted with fluid grace, leading his limping mare toward the well. Eliza watched from the doorway, noting the way he murmured gently to the animal, checking her hoof with practiced care. He was older than her, perhaps 32 or 33, with sun-weathered skin and eyes that seemed to hold both sorrow and strength. As he worked the pump, filling the trough, his gaze drifted to the cabin window, where the candle still burned. "That's a faithful flame," he said quietly, not looking at her directly. "Every night?" The question hit something tender inside her chest. "Every night," she confirmed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Who are you missing?" The simple question, asked without pity or judgment, nearly undid her. 3 months of holding herself together, of pretending strength she didn't feel, suddenly felt like too much weight to carry. "Everyone," she admitted. "My father, my mother, the life we had before." She stopped, angry at herself for showing weakness to a stranger. Cole finished watering his horse and straightened, finally turning to face her fully. In the fading light, she could see the lines around his eyes, the silver threading through his dark hair, the way his jaw tightened as if her words had struck something in him too. "I know that candle," he said softly. "I lit one like it for 3 years after I lost my wife and son. Cholera on the trail north. Kept thinking if I just kept that flame going, somehow they'd find their way back to me." He paused, removing his hat. "Took me a long time to learn that the light isn't for the dead, ma'am. It's for us. To remind us we're still here, still breathing, still worth the living." Eliza's throat tightened. No one had spoken to her like this, like she was a person with feelings that mattered, not just another mouth that needed feeding or a burden to be solved. "You can't stay out here alone," Cole continued, his tone gentle but firm. "This country doesn't forgive solitude. When's the last time you had a proper meal? When's the last time you slept without one eye open?" "I manage," she said, but even she could hear the hollowness in the words. "Managing isn't living." He took a step closer, but not threateningly. "I've got a ranch 3 days north of here. Nothing grand, but it's solid. Good water, decent grazing. I could use help with the house, cooking, mending, the work that keeps a place from falling into ruin. In return, you'd have protection, food, and a roof that doesn't leak when it storms." "I don't need charity," Eliza said quickly, pride flaring. "Good, because I'm not offering any. I'm offering fair work for fair wages. You're not property. You're a person who deserves better than dying slowly in an empty cabin." His eyes met hers directly. "Come north with me. Give yourself a chance at something more than grief." She wanted to refuse. Every instinct screamed that accepting help was weakness, that strangers were dangerous, that leaving this cabin meant abandoning the last traces of her parents. But another part of her, the part that lit the candle every night, hoping tomorrow might be different, whispered that maybe this was the answer to prayers she'd been too afraid to voice. "I need time to think," she said finally. "Fair enough, I'll camp by the creek tonight. If you decide yes, we leave at dawn. If not, I'll shoe my horse and be on my way." He tipped his hat. "Either way, don't let that candle burn all night. The living need rest too." Eliza watched him lead his horse toward the creek, her heart pounding with possibility and terror in equal measure. Inside the cabin, the candle still flickered, casting dancing shadows on the walls that had witnessed so much loss. That night, she lay awake, staring at the flame. She thought of her mother's last words. "Don't let this place bury you too, Eliza. Promise me you'll find a way to live, not just survive." She thought of Cole's eyes, which held the same kind of grief she carried, but somehow hadn't let it consume him. She thought of the ranch he described, and wondered if maybe, just maybe, she could light a candle there not out of mourning, but out of hope. When dawn broke pink and gold over the Montana plains, Eliza emerged from the cabin with a small trunk of belongings. Cole was already saddling his horse, but he stopped when he saw her, something like relief crossing his features. "You'll need a horse," he said simply. "Sold her last month for seed that never took root." The admission stung, but she forced her chin up. Without a word, Cole swung into his saddle and extended his hand down to her. "Then you'll ride with me. When we get to the ranch, we'll find you a mare of your own. A woman should always have her own horse. Freedom matters." Eliza hesitated only a moment before taking his hand. His grip was strong, calloused, and steadier than anything she'd felt in months. He pulled her up behind him effortlessly, and she settled onto the horse's back, acutely aware of the warmth of his body in front of hers, the solid reality of him. "The candle," she said suddenly. "I didn't blow it out." Cole glanced back at the cabin window, where the small flame still danced. "Let it burn out on its own. Sometimes the only way to let go, not by forcing the ending, but by walking towards something new until the old light fades naturally." As they rode north, Eliza kept her hands lightly on Cole's waist, feeling the rhythm of the horse beneath them and the vast sky opening up ahead. Behind them, in the cabin window, the candle burned lower and lower, until finally, as they crested the first hill, it guttered out, in a whisper of smoke. The journey north took 4 days. Not 3. A late spring storm forced them to shelter in an abandoned line shack the second night, rain hammering the roof, while they sat on opposite sides of a small fire, sharing jerky and hardtack. "Tell me about your ranch," Eliza said, breaking the comfortable silence. Cole poked at the fire with a stick, his expression thoughtful. "It's called the Bridger Creek Ranch, about 300 acres along the creek that gives it its name. I've got 30 head of cattle, a dozen horses, and a barn that's bigger than the house." He smiled slightly. "My wife used to say I loved those horses more than was decent." She wasn't entirely wrong. "What was her name?" Eliza asked softly. "Sarah. My boy was James. We called him Jamie. He was only 4. Cole's voice didn't break, but it grew quieter. "It happened fast. One day they were fine. The next day they were burning with fever. And 3 days later—" He stopped, jaw working. "I buried them under a cottonwood tree near Fort Laramie. Couldn't bring myself to keep going north after that. So I turned around, found this land, and tried to build something that could hold all that grief without collapsing." "Did it work?" Eliza asked. "Building something new?" "Some days better than others." He looked at her across the fire. "But I learned that grief isn't something you get over. It's something you learn to carry differently. And it's lighter when you're not carrying it alone." Thunder cracked overhead, and Eliza flinched involuntarily. Cole noticed but didn't comment, just shifted closer to the fire. "What about you?" he asked. "What were they like, your parents?" Eliza hadn't spoken about them to anyone since the funerals. But something about the storm outside, the isolation of the shack, and Cole's own honesty made the words come easier. "My father was a dreamer. Believed in this land even when it tried to kill him. Every drought, every failed crop, he'd say next year will be better. And my mother," her voice caught. "She was his anchor, kept him tethered to reality when his dreams got too big. She taught me to read, to keep accounts, to see the world as it is, not just as we wish it would be. Stubbornness, maybe, or fear. Leaving that cabin felt like betraying them, like admitting they died for nothing." She wrapped her arms around herself. "But staying there was killing me too, just slower." "Then coming north was brave," Cole said firmly. "Don't let anyone, including yourself, tell you different." The storm raged through the night. At some point, exhausted by days of travel and the emotional weight of their conversation, Eliza dozed off, sitting up. She woke hours later to find she'd slumped sideways, her head resting against Cole's shoulder. He was still awake, staring at the dying fire, his breathing slow and steady. "Sorry," she mumbled, starting to pull away. His hand came up gently to stop her. "Don't be. Rest. We've got a hard day ahead tomorrow." Something in his voice, the kindness without expectation, the comfort without demand, made her relax back against him. For the first time in months, she felt safe enough to truly sleep. When she woke at dawn, she was covered with Cole's coat, and he was already saddling the horse outside. They reached Bridger Creek Ranch on the evening of the 4th day. The setting sun painted everything gold and amber. The log cabin with its covered porch, the large barn with fresh paint, the creek that ribboned through the property like liquid silver. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks still crowned with snow despite the warming season. "It's beautiful," Eliza breathed. "It's home," Cole said simply. He dismounted and helped her down, his hands steady on her waist. For a moment they stood close, and Eliza felt her heart kick strangely in her chest. A voice shattered the moment. "Well, well, Cole Bridger finally brings a woman home. Didn't think I'd live to see the day." An older man emerged from the barn, weathered as old leather, with a white beard and twinkling eyes. He walked with a pronounced limp, but moved with surprising speed. "Eliza, this is Hank Winters. He helps run the place and makes sure I don't do anything too stupid. Hank, this is Miss Eliza Morrison. She'll be staying on to help with the house." Hank's eyes were sharp but kind. "Welcome, Miss Morrison. Lord knows this place needs a woman's touch. Cole here thinks beans and coffee are the 4 food groups." Despite her exhaustion, Eliza smiled. "I'll do my best to expand his culinary horizons." The house was simple, but well built. 2 bedrooms, a main room with a stone fireplace, and a kitchen that actually had a proper stove instead of just a hearth. Cole had clearly tried to keep it clean, but there was dust in the corners, dishes in the basin, and the general air of a place that was shelter, but not quite home. "The smaller bedroom is yours," Cole said, carrying in her trunk. "I'll sleep out here on the main room floor for propriety's sake. Hank's got quarters attached to the barn." "You don't have to give up your room," Eliza protested. "Already done." His tone was gentle but final. "You deserve privacy and comfort. Besides, I'm used to sleeping under the stars." 4 walls and a roof feel downright luxurious. That first week established their rhythm. Eliza woke before dawn to start bread and coffee. Cole and Hank worked the ranch, mending fences, checking cattle, breaking horses. She cleaned, cooked, mended clothes, and slowly brought order to the chaos. In the evenings, they ate together at the rough-hewn table, sharing stories and comfortable silences. Eliza found herself watching Cole when she thought he wasn't looking. The way his hands moved with such careful strength, gentling a nervous horse or repairing a bridle. The way he listened when she spoke, really listened, as if her words mattered. The way he never presumed, never pushed, never made her feel like she owed him anything beyond the work they'd agreed upon. It was Cole who insisted on teaching her to ride properly. A woman should always have her own horse. Freedom matters. He'd said that first day, and he meant it. He brought out a gentle bay mare named Willow and spent patient hours teaching Eliza not just to sit a saddle, but to truly ride, to move with the horse, to read its moods, to feel the communication between animal and rider. "You're a natural," he said one afternoon, watching her canter Willow around the corral. Pride warmed his voice in a way that made Eliza's chest tight. "I had a good teacher," she replied, bringing Willow to a stop beside him. Their eyes met, and something unspoken hung in the air between them, a possibility neither quite dared to name. It was Hank who finally called them out on it. One evening after supper, as Cole walked Eliza back to the house from the barn, Hank cleared his throat meaningfully. "You two dance around each other like nervous colts," he said bluntly. "It's painful to watch. Cole, you're allowed to be happy again. Sarah would have wanted that. And Miss Eliza, that man looks at you like you hung the moon and stars. Just thought someone should say it out loud." He stumped off toward his quarters, leaving them standing in the twilight, both flushed with embarrassment and something deeper. "Hank's nothing if not subtle," Cole said dryly. "He's not wrong, though," Eliza said quietly, "about how you look at me." Cole turned to face her fully. "No, he's not wrong." From that first night, When I saw you standing there with that candle burning behind you, looking so fierce and so fragile all at once, Eliza, you've become more than I expected, more than I thought I deserved to hope for. I feel the same, she admitted, but I'm afraid. Every person I've loved, I've lost. What if? What if is the question that keeps us from living, Cole interrupted gently. He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, with heartbreaking tenderness. I can't promise we won't know loss again. Nobody can. But I can promise that whatever time we have, I'll spend it seeing you, not as the widow's daughter, not as a woman who needs saving, but as Eliza, strong, brave, worth every good thing life has to offer. She kissed him then, rising on her toes to press her lips to his. It was gentle and tentative, a question more than a demand. Cole's arms came around her carefully, as if she were something precious he was afraid to break. When they pulled apart, both breathing harder, Cole rested his forehead against hers. I'll die before I hurt you, he whispered. That's my promise. Then we'll have to make sure we both live a long time, she whispered back. Their happiness lasted exactly 3 weeks. Eliza was in the garden behind the house when the riders came. 4 men, hard-faced and dusty, with the look of those who lived outside the law. She recognized their type immediately, having seen men like them drift through town, looking for easy prey. The leader was a tall man with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, giving him a permanent sneer. He dismounted without invitation, his eyes raking over the property with clear assessment. Nice spread, he said to no one in particular. Must be profitable. Cole emerged from the barn, Hank behind him. Both men had read the situation instantly, the tension in their shoulders, the way their hands hovered near their gun belts, told Eliza this was serious danger. Can I help you gentlemen with something? Cole's voice was calm, but Eliza heard the steel beneath it. Name's Jack Deacon. This here is my crew. We've had a run of bad luck lately, and we're looking for a place to rest, recuperate, maybe do some business. This ranch isn't for sale, and we don't need help, Cole said flatly. There's a town 15 miles south. You'll find accommodations there. Deacon smiled, showing tobacco-stained teeth. See, I don't think you understand. We're not asking. This is prime land, good water, close enough to the territorial road for our purposes. You're going to sell it to us. Cheap. No. The single word dropped like a stone. Deacon's smile vanished. You got a woman here, he said, nodding toward Eliza. Pretty thing. Be a shame if something happened to her. Or to that old man. Or to you, for that matter. Accidents happen out here in the wild country. Cole's hand moved to his gun, but Deacon was faster, his weapon already drawn and aimed at Cole's chest. Now, no need for that. We're all going to be civilized about this. You got 3 days to think about our offer. We'll be camped by the river. When we come back, you'll sign those papers, or, well, let's just say things will get unpleasant. They rode off, laughing among themselves. The moment they were out of sight, Cole turned to Hank. Get the rifles. We're going to fortify the house. Cole, we can go to the sheriff, Eliza said urgently. Sheriff's 3 days away, and he's 1 man against 4 armed outlaws. By the time he could organize a posse, it would be too late. Cole's jaw was set. No, we defend what's ours. That night, they boarded the windows and stockpiled ammunition. Hank took the barn, while Cole insisted on staying in the house with Eliza. They sat up through the dark hours, rifles across their laps, listening for the sound of approaching horses. You should leave, Cole said quietly. take Willow and ride south. This isn't your fight." "It absolutely is my fight," Eliza shot back. "This is my home too, and I'm not leaving you to face them alone." "Eliza." "No." She turned to face him fully. "You told me I'm not property. I'm a person. Well, persons get to make their own choices, and I choose to stand with you. Together." Cole's expression softened. "Together," he repeated, the word both a prayer and a promise. The attack came on the second night. They heard the horses first, then the shouts. 4 riders circled the house, firing shots into the air, trying to panic them into submission. Cole and Eliza fired back from the windows, their shots careful and measured. Hank's rifle barked from the barn, catching one of the riders in the shoulder and sending him tumbling from his saddle. "The barn!" Cole shouted suddenly. "They're trying to burn the barn!" Smoke was already rising, orange flames licking at the old wood. If the barn went, they'd lose the horses, the feed, everything that made the ranch viable. Without thinking, Cole burst from the house, running toward the barn with a bucket. Eliza screamed his name, but he was already gone, racing through the gunfire. She saw Deacon raise his rifle, saw him aim at Cole's back, and something primal surged through her. She didn't think. She just moved. Eliza burst through the door, her own rifle raised, and fired. The shot caught Deacon in the leg, sending him sprawling. His gun fell, discharging harmlessly into the dirt. The other 2 riders, seeing their leader down and one of their men injured, wheeled their horses and fled into the darkness. Cole doused the flames with Hank's help, saving most of the barn. When he turned back to the house, he saw Eliza standing in the doorway, rifle still smoking, her face pale but determined. "You saved my life," he said, crossing to her in long strides. "You do the same for me," she replied simply. He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "When I saw him aim at you, God, Eliza, I've never been so terrified." "I'm all right," she murmured against his chest. "We're both all right." Deacon was groaning on the ground, clutching his wounded leg. Hank stood over him with a shotgun, making sure he didn't try anything foolish. "Sheriff's going to want to talk to you," Cole told him coldly. "Attempted murder, arson, extortion. That's enough to hang you twice over." They bound Deacon and his injured companion, locked them in the barn, and waited for dawn. Cole sent Hank to fetch the sheriff, while he and Eliza cleaned up the damage and tried to calm the spooked horses. As the sun rose, painting the smoke-stained ranch in shades of pink and gold, Cole found Eliza sitting on the porch steps, staring at the mountains. "You all right?" he asked, settling beside her. "I shot a man," she said quietly. "I know he deserved it, but I still shot a man." "Oh, you defended your home, your family." Cole took her hand. "That's not something to be ashamed of. That's courage." "Family," Eliza repeated, testing the word. "Is that what we are?" "I'd like us to be." Cole turned to face her fully. "Eliza Morrison, I'm not good with fancy words, but I know that you're the bravest person I've ever met. You light up this ranch. Hell, you light up my whole world. And if you'll have me, I'd like to spend the rest of my life proving that you made the right choice when you rode north with me." "Is that a proposal, Cole Bridger?" Eliza asked, her heart hammering. "Yes, ma'am, it is." He pulled a simple silver band from his pocket. His mother's ring, he told her later. "Will you marry me? Not because you need protection or a roof over your head, but because we choose each other. Together." Eliza looked at the ring, then at the ranch around them, scarred by violence but still standing, still beautiful. She thought of the candle she used to light every night, burning for those she'd lost. And she thought of the new light she'd found here, in this hard country, with this hard man who'd shown her that strength and gentleness could coexist. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you." Cole slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her as the sun climbed higher, burning away the last shadows of the night. They were married 3 weeks later by the circuit preacher, with Hank serving as witness and a handful of neighboring ranchers in attendance. Eliza wore a simple cream-colored dress she'd sewn herself, with wildflowers in her hair that Cole had picked that morning. When the preacher asked if she took Cole to be her husband, she thought of the long journey that had brought her here, the grief, the fear, the desperate nights lighting candles for the dead. And she thought of Cole's words, "The light isn't for the dead, it's for us, to remind us we're still here, still breathing, still worth the living." "I do," she said clearly, her voice strong. They held the celebration in the newly rebuilt barn, with fiddle music and dancing and enough food to feed everyone twice over. As evening approached and the guests began to depart, Cole pulled Eliza aside. "I have something to show you," said, leading her toward the house. In the window of their bedroom now, not just his or hers, he'd placed a candle. But this one was different, set in a beautiful brass holder, surrounded by small stones and dried flowers. "The widow's daughter lit a candle every night," Cole said softly. A passing cowboy wondered whom she was missing. "Now we light it together, not to remember who we lost, but to celebrate who we found." Eliza's eyes filled with tears, but they were good tears this time. "Together," she whispered. "Together," he confirmed, pulling her close. They lit the candle together that night and many nights after. Over the years, as their family grew, first one child, then another, then a third, the candle became a tradition. Every evening, as the sun set over Bridger Creek Ranch, they would gather to light it, each taking turns to share something they were grateful for. The widow's daughter had found her light again, and this time, it would never go out. The first winter came hard and fast to Bridger Creek Ranch. Snow began falling in late October, transforming the landscape into a pristine white wilderness that was both beautiful and unforgiving. Eliza stood at the kitchen window, watching the flakes dance and swirl, feeling the baby move inside her belly. She was 4 months along, and the pregnancy had been a surprise, a joyful one, but a surprise nonetheless. Cole had been impossibly gentle since learning about it, constantly worried she was working too hard or lifting too much. It would have been annoying if it hadn't been so endearing. "You're staring at that snow like it personally offended you," Hank said, stomping into the kitchen with an armload of firewood. At 73, he moved slower than he used to, but he refused to let age stop him from pulling his weight. "Just thinking about how much has changed," Eliza replied, turning to help him stack the wood. He waved her off. "Sit down before Cole has my hide. That man's been hovering like a mother hen." Hank grinned. "Never seen him so happy, though, or so terrified." Eliza laughed. "He asked me this morning if I was sure I should be needing bread. Bread, Hank. Give him time. First baby jitters hit every man hard. I remember when my Martha was expecting our eldest, I wouldn't let her do anything more strenuous than sit and knit." It was rare for Hank to mention his past. Eliza knew he'd had a family once, before the war, before life scattered them in different directions. She settled into the rocking chair Cole had built for her, her hands resting on her belly. The door burst open, bringing with it a gust of freezing wind, and Cole, covered in snow from head to boot. "Storm's getting worse," he announced, shaking off his coat. "I've secured the barn and brought the cattle closer to the windbreak. We're going to be snowed in for a few days at least." "Then it's a good thing I baked extra bread yesterday," Eliza said. Cole crossed to her immediately, kneeling beside the rocking chair and placing his large, work-roughened hand over hers on her belly. "How are you feeling? Any pain? Any cramping?" "Cole, I'm fine. The baby's fine. We're both fine. You'd tell me if something was wrong." She cupped his face, feeling the cold of outside still clinging to his skin. "I promise. Now, go warm yourself by the fire before you catch your death." That night, as the storm howled outside and the three of them sat around the fireplace, Eliza felt a contentment she'd never imagined possible. Cole read aloud from a book of poetry, something Eliza had been teaching him, as he'd never had much schooling. His reading was still halting, but he practiced every night with determined concentration. "Listen to this one," he said. "Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul." He looked up at Eliza. "Emily Dickinson. That's how I felt when I found you, like hope had come back." "You're getting sentimental in your old age," Hank teased, but his eyes were suspiciously bright. The storm lasted 3 days. On the 4th morning, Eliza woke to brilliant sunshine, reflecting off snow so white it hurt to look at. She was alone in bed. Cole had clearly risen early to check on the animals. She dressed warmly and ventured outside, marveling at how the storm had transformed everything. She found Cole at the barn, examining one of the horses. His expression was troubled. "What's wrong?" she asked. Dancers favoring her left foreleg might have strained it during the storm. He ran his hand down the mare's leg with practiced care. "Nothing serious, but she'll need rest." Cole Bridger, worrying about horses. Some things never change. He straightened and pulled her close, mindful of her belly between them. Some things shouldn't change, but some things... He placed his hand over the baby again. Some things are the best kind of different. They stood there in the winter sunshine, and Eliza thought about how far she'd come from that desperate woman, lighting candles in an empty cabin. Here, she'd found not just survival, but life. Messy, complicated, beautiful life. The baby arrived in early April, when the snow was finally melting and the first green shoots were pushing through the earth. The labor was long and difficult, attended by the doctor from town and a midwife named Mrs. Chen, who delivered half the babies in the territory. Cole paced outside like a caged animal, wearing a path in the dirt. Hank sat on the porch, whittling with false calm, but his hands shook slightly every time Eliza cried out. "First babies take their time," Mrs. Chen called out the window. "The girl's doing fine, Mr. Bridger. Stop wearing a hole in the ground." 14 hours after the pains started, a baby's cry pierced the air. Cole froze mid-step, his heart hammering so hard he thought it might burst from his chest. Mrs. Chen appeared at the door, smiling broadly. "You have a daughter, Mr. Bridger, strong and healthy with good lungs. Your wife wants to see you." Cole practically ran into the house. Eliza lay in their bed, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in soft blankets. When she looked up at him, tears streaming down her face, Cole felt his own eyes burn. "Come meet your daughter," she whispered. He approached slowly, almost reverently, and looked down at the smallest person he'd ever seen. She had dark hair like his, but Eliza's delicate features. Her tiny hand was curled into a fist, and as he watched, he broke his breast structure. Her eyes opened, blue and unfocused, but searching. "She's perfect," he breathed. "We decided on Sarah," Eliza said softly. "If that's all right with you, for your first wife, and her middle name is Grace, for my mother." Cole's throat closed with emotion. He sat carefully on the edge of the bed and wrapped his arms around both of them, his wife and his daughter, his whole world contained in this small space. "Sarah Grace Bridger," he said, "welcome home." Hank came in a few minutes later, his weathered face soft with wonder as he looked at the baby. "She's going to have you both wrapped around her tiny finger," he predicted. "Mark my words." He was absolutely right. 2 years passed in a blur of sleepless nights and joyful days. Sarah grew from a tiny infant into a toddler with her father's stubborn determination and her mother's quick smile. She followed Cole around the ranch like a shadow, her chubby legs pumping to keep up with his long strides. "Papa! Papa! Wait!" she called one morning as Cole headed to the barn. He turned, grinning, and scooped her up. "Where do you think you're going, little bird?" "With you. See horses." "All right, but you have to stay close. The horses are big, and you're still little." In the barn, Sarah watched with fascination as Cole worked with a new colt, his voice low and soothing. The animal calmed under his touch, and Sarah clapped her hands in delight. "Papa Magic," she announced. "Not magic, sweetheart. Just patience and respect. You treat animals right, they'll treat you right. Same as people." Eliza appeared in the barn doorway, one hand pressed to her lower back. She was pregnant again, 7 months along this time, and the baby seemed determined to arrive early. "Cole, there's a wagon coming up the road," she said. "Looks like official business." Cole handed Sarah to Hank and went to meet the visitors. 2 men in suits climbed down from the wagon, clearly government men, with their crisp clothes and serious expressions. "Mr. Bridger, I'm Agent Morrison from the Territorial Land Office. This is Agent Barnes. We need to discuss your property boundaries." "Come inside," Cole said warily. In the kitchen, over coffee, the agents spread out maps and documents. Eliza sat beside Cole, her hand finding his under the table. "There's been a surveying error," Morrison explained. "The boundaries were drawn incorrectly when you filed your claim. According to the corrected survey, about 50 acres of your northern pasture actually belongs to the territory." "That's prime grazing land," Cole said, his voice tight. "Without it, I can't sustain my current herd size." "We understand the inconvenience, but the law is clear. However, the territorial government is prepared to offer compensation." "I don't want compensation. I want my land." "Mr. Bridger, I sympathize, but this isn't negotiable. The corrected boundaries will take effect in 30 days. I strongly suggest you work with us on the compensation package." After they left, Cole sat at the table with his head in his hands. Eliza rubbed his shoulders, feeling the tension knotted there. "We'll figure it out," she said softly. "How?" 50 acres, Eliza. That's not just land. That's our livelihood. I'll have to sell off part of the herd, maybe let some of the horses go. And with another baby coming," he stopped, taking a shaky breath. "I promised you security. I promised you a good life. And you've given me that. We've built this together, Cole. We'll find a way through this together too." But finding a way proved harder than either of them expected. Over the next few weeks, Cole threw himself into work with almost manic energy, trying to find solutions. He contacted lawyers, other ranchers, anyone who might have advice. The stress showed in the lines deepening around his eyes, in the way he barely slept. One night, Eliza found him sitting on the porch in the dark, staring at nothing. "Talk to me," she said, settling beside him despite her awkward bulk. "I keep thinking about my father," Cole said quietly. "He lost everything in the war. Our plantation, our home, our whole way of life. I was just a boy, but I remember watching him try to rebuild, try to hold things together. He couldn't do it. The loss broke something in him, and he gave up. Just stopped fighting." "You're not your father, Cole." "How do you know? What if I can't protect what we've built? What if I fail you and Sarah and this baby?" Eliza took his face in both hands, forcing him to look at her. "Listen to me. You are the strongest man I know, not because you never struggle, but because you keep going, even when it's hard. We might lose some land, we might have to adjust our plans, but we won't lose each other, and we won't lose this family. That's what matters." "Together," Cole whispered, the word a lifeline. "Together," she confirmed. The baby, another girl they named Emma Rose, arrived 3 weeks later, healthy and loud. Her birth seemed to shift something in Cole, reminding him of what was truly important. He stopped obsessing over the land dispute and started focusing on solutions. With Hank's help, he reconfigured the ranch operations, selling some cattle, but investing in better breeding stock for those that remained. He started breaking horses for sale, leveraging his reputation as a skilled trainer. It was hard work and meant less profit in the short term, but it was sustainable. And slowly, month by month, they found their balance again. Sarah was 5 and Emma nearly 3 when the trouble with the Blackwood gang started. Cole was in town buying supplies when he heard about it. A group of outlaws had been hitting ranches throughout the territory, stealing cattle, horses, and anything else of value. "They hit the Peterson place last week," the store owner told him. "Cleaned them out, took 30 head of cattle and every horse they had. Tom Peterson's talking about giving up, moving back east." Cole loaded his supplies with a growing sense of dread. Bridger Creek Ranch would be an obvious target. Good horses, isolated location, only 3 adults to defend it. When he got home, he found Hank already reinforcing the barn doors. "Heard the news in town," Hank said grimly. "Figured we'd better prepare." That night, after the girls were asleep, Cole and Eliza sat at the kitchen table making plans. "You should take the girls and go stay with the Millers," Cole said. "Their ranch is closer to town, more people around." "We're not leaving," Eliza said firmly. "Eliza, these aren't amateurs. They're dangerous." "Then we'll be dangerous too." She met his eyes steadily. "I'm not running from our home. Not again, never again." Cole wanted to argue, but he knew that look. Eliza had come too far, grown too strong, to be sent away like she needed protecting. She was his partner, not someone to be sheltered. "Then we prepare properly," he said. "Extra rifles, ammunition. We teach Sarah to hide if there's trouble, and we hope to God they pass us by." God, apparently, wasn't listening. The Blackwood gang came on a moonless night 2 weeks later. 6 riders, heavily armed, approaching with the confidence of men who didn't expect resistance. Cole saw them first from the barn, where he'd been standing watch. He fired a shot in the air, a warning, and a signal to Eliza and Hank that trouble had arrived. "That's not very neighborly," called out a voice from the darkness. "We're just here for what's ours." "Nothing here belongs to you," Cole shouted back. "Ride on." "Can't do that, friend. See, we've been watching this place. Nice horses you got. We'll be taking them. And maybe we'll take that pretty wife of yours too, for entertainment. Rage flooded through Cole, white-hot and all-consuming. He fired again, this time aiming for the voice. A yelp told him he'd hit something, though not fatally. "That was a mistake," the voice snarled. Gunfire erupted from multiple directions. Cole ducked behind a water trough, returning fire methodically. From the house, he could see muzzle flashes. Eliza shooting from the bedroom window, Hank from the kitchen. They were outnumbered, but they had defensive positions. The battle raged for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes. Cole took a bullet to his shoulder and kept fighting. Hank caught one in the leg, but stayed at his post. The outlaws tried to fire the barn, but Eliza shot the man before he could light the torch. Finally, the remaining raiders pulled back. "This ain't over," one of them shouted. "We'll be back, and next time we'll burn everything to the ground." Cole waited until the sound of hooves faded completely before staggering back to the house. His shoulder was bleeding heavily, and the world tilted dangerously. Eliza met him at the door, her face pale but composed. "Let me see it. I'm fine. Check on Hank and the girls." "Hank's already tending his own leg, and the girls slept through most of it. Thank God. Now sit down before you fall down." She cleaned and bandaged his wound with steady hands, though he could see them trembling slightly. When she finished, she sat back and let out a shaky breath. "They'll come back," she said. "I know. Then we need help. Real help. The sheriff is 3 days away, and we don't have 3 days." Eliza's mind was racing, working through options. "But there's a Crow village 2 days north of here. You've traded with them before, treated them fairly. Maybe they'd be willing to help." It was a desperate idea, but desperate times called for desperate measures. The Crow had no love for the gangs that terrorized the territory, and Cole had always maintained good relations with the local tribes. "It's risky," Cole said, "and I can't ride with this shoulder." "Then I'll go," Eliza said. "Absolutely not. Cole, you can barely lift your arm. Hank's leg is torn up. Someone has to go, and I'm the only one who can." She gripped his good hand. "I can do this. You taught me to ride, to track, to survive out there. Trust me." Cole wanted to refuse, wanted to lock her in the house where she'd be safe. But he knew she was right. And more than that, he knew she was capable. "Go slow," he said finally, echoing words from years ago. "And come back to me. Always," she promised. Eliza left at dawn, riding Willow hard toward the north. She carried water, dried meat, ammunition, and a letter from Cole explaining the situation. The journey was grueling, across rivers, through dense forest, over terrain that tested every skill she'd learned. She reached the Crow village as the sun set on the second day, exhausted and saddle-sore, but alive. The guards initially blocked her path, but when she showed them Cole's letter and explained the situation, they brought her to their chief, a dignified older man named Many Clouds. He read the letter slowly, his face thoughtful. Eliza waited, her heart pounding. "Bridger is a good man," Many Clouds finally said in careful English. "He trades fairly, respects our land. These outlaws, they are a disease on this territory. They attack our people too." He paused. "We will help." Relief flooded through Eliza so powerfully she nearly wept. "Thank you. Thank you so much. Rest tonight. Tomorrow we ride." They reached Bridger Creek Ranch the next afternoon. Eliza, 12 Crow warriors, and a renewed sense of hope. Cole's face when he saw them was worth every mile of the hard ride. "You did it," he breathed, pulling her close with his good arm. We did it, she corrected. Together. Many Clouds and his warriors positioned themselves strategically around the ranch. When the Blackwood gang returned that night, 8 riders this time, reinforced and confident, they rode into an ambush. The battle was fierce but short. Caught between the ranch defenders and the Crow warriors, the outlaws had no chance. By dawn, 4 were dead, 3 were captured, and 1 had fled into the wilderness, unlikely to return. The territorial marshal arrived 3 days later to take custody of the prisoners. He listened to the story with increasing amazement. "You're either the bravest people I've ever met, or the craziest," he said. "Probably both." Many Clouds and his warriors stayed for a feast before returning home. As they prepared to leave, the chief clasped Cole's hand. "You have a strong wife," he said, "and a strong spirit. Your ranch will stand for many years." "Because of your help," Cole replied. "We won't forget it." After they left, Cole found Eliza in the garden, tending the vegetables that had somehow survived all the chaos. He sat beside her, his shoulder still bandaged, but healing. "You rode 2 days through dangerous country to get help," he said quietly. "You saved us all." "I learned from the best." She smiled at him. "A wise man once told me that courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about doing what needs doing even when you're terrified." "Smart man." "The smartest." She leaned against him. "Though he tends to underestimate his wife." "Never again," Cole promised. "You're the strongest person I know, Eliza Bridger. I see a woman worth saving. No, I see a woman who saves herself and everyone else too." They sat together as the sun set, watching their daughters play in the yard and feeling the solid earth beneath them. The ranch had survived. Their family had survived, and they had done it together. The years continued to roll by like the seasons, each bringing its own challenges and joys. Sarah grew into a strong-willed girl who could rope a calf as well as any ranch hand, while Emma developed a gift for gentling the wildest horses. A third daughter, Margaret Maggie Louise, arrived when Sarah was 8, completing their family. Hank's leg never fully healed from the Blackwood raid, and by the time he turned 80, he spent more time in a chair on the porch than in the saddle. But his mind remained sharp, and the girls adored him, constantly begging for stories of the old days. It was Hank who first noticed the change in Cole. "He's been coughing a lot lately," Hank mentioned to Eliza one morning, "and he seems tired all the time, not like him." Eliza had noticed too, but Cole waved off her concerns, insisting he was just getting older. It wasn't until he collapsed while mending fence that she insisted on bringing the doctor out from town. Dr. Patterson's examination was thorough and grim. "It's his lungs," he told Eliza privately. "Some kind of inflammation, maybe from all those years breathing dust and smoke. There's no cure, but rest might slow the progression." "How long?" Eliza asked, her voice barely steady. "Impossible to say. Could be months, could be years. But he needs to stop working so hard." Getting Cole to rest was like trying to stop the wind from blowing. He argued that the ranch needed him, that he couldn't just sit idle while there was work to be done. It took Eliza putting her foot down, and Sarah, now 16, stepping up to take over much of the physical labor before he finally relented. Those months were difficult for all of them. Cole chafed at his limitations, frustrated by his weakening body, even as his mind remained as sharp as ever. But slowly, he adjusted. He taught Sarah the finer points of horse training, passed on his knowledge of the land to Emma, and spent precious time with young Maggie, reading her stories and teaching her letters. One evening, as Eliza helped him to bed, a routine that had become necessary as his strength waned, Cole caught her hand. "I'm sorry," he said. "For what?" "For not giving you more time. For getting sick when there's still so much life to live." Eliza sat on the edge of the bed, tears streaming down her face. "Cole Bridger, you've given me everything. A home, a family, love beyond measure. Don't you dare apologize for being human. Promise me something," he said, his breathing labored. "Promise me you won't light candles for the dead anymore. Promise me you'll keep living, keep building, keep being the strong, amazing woman you are." "Cole, promise me, Eliza." "I promise," she whispered, "but you're not going anywhere yet. We still have time." And they did. Nearly 2 more years. Cole lived to see Sarah get engaged to a neighboring rancher's son, a good young man who treated her with respect and admiration. He lived to see Emma break the most difficult horse on the ranch, a feat that made him prouder than he could express. He lived to see Maggie turn 6, bright and curious and full of life. He died on a clear October morning, with Eliza holding his hand and his daughters gathered around his bed. His last words were, "Together, always together." The funeral drew people from across the territory. Ranchers, townspeople, Crow warriors, including many Clouds, now quite elderly himself. They all came to pay respects to a man who'd been fair, honest, and brave. Hank delivered the eulogy, his voice cracking with emotion. "Cole Bridger was the finest man I ever knew. He built this ranch with his own hands, but more than that, he built a family, a legacy, something that will endure long after we're all dust. He taught us that strength isn't about never falling, it's about getting back up. And that love isn't about perfect moments, it's about choosing each other, day after day, through whatever comes." They buried him on a hill overlooking the ranch, under a cottonwood tree he'd planted the year Emma was born. Eliza stood at the grave long after everyone else had left, feeling the weight of loss, but also, strangely, a kind of peace. "You kept your promise," she said to the freshly turned earth. "You gave me a good life, the best life. And I'll keep mine too. I'll keep living. For you, for them, for me." That night, she didn't light a candle. 20 years after Cole's death, Eliza Bridger stood on the same porch where she'd first arrived as a desperate widow's daughter. She was 62 now, her dark hair shot through with silver, her hands worn from a lifetime of work. But her back was straight, her eyes clear, and her spirit unbroken. Bridger Creek Ranch had not just survived, it had thrived. Sarah and her husband had expanded the cattle operation. Emma had developed a renowned breeding program for horses, with buyers coming from as far away as California. Maggie had married a lawyer and moved to the territorial capital, but she visited often with her own children. The ranch now employed 6 hands, had doubled its acreage through strategic purchases, and was respected throughout the territory. The Bridger name meant quality, integrity, and strength. But it was the small things that gave Eliza the most joy. The way her grandchildren ran through the house where their mother and aunts had grown up. The sound of laughter in the barn where Cole had taught her to ride. The evening gatherings where 3 generations shared meals and stories. Hank had passed away 5 years earlier, at the remarkable age of 97. He died in his sleep, peacefully, having lived to see everything he'd helped build flourish. They'd buried him next to Cole, under the same cottonwood tree. On this particular evening, As the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and pink, Eliza's eldest grandson, Sarah's boy, named Cole after his grandfather, approached her on the porch. "Grandma, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart. Mama told me you came here when you were young, that you had nothing, and Grandpa Cole took you in. Is that true?" Eliza smiled. "It's true, though it's more complicated than that. I had nothing but grief and fear. Your grandfather showed me I could have more, hope and love and a future worth fighting for." "Were you scared?" "Terrified. Every day for months. But being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing what needs doing, even when you're afraid." Young Cole nodded thoughtfully. "Mama says you're the bravest person she knows." "Your mama is kind." Eliza ruffled his hair. "But I'll tell you a secret. Courage is contagious. Your grandfather taught me to be brave, and I tried to teach your mama, and she's teaching you. That's how the best things get passed down." As night fell, the family gathered in the house for dinner. The table had been extended multiple times over the years to accommodate everyone, and it groaned under the weight of food. Conversation flowed freely. Talk of horses and cattle, town gossip, plans for the upcoming harvest. After the meal, Sarah caught her mother alone in the kitchen. "You know, Mama, I've been thinking. The ranch is doing well enough that you could retire if you wanted. Move to town, live somewhere easier." Eliza laughed. "Easier? Sweetheart, I've been fighting easy my whole life. This ranch is my home. I'll leave it the same way your father did. Feet first and not a moment before. I had to try." Sarah hugged her mother tightly. "You've given us so much. I just want you to have some peace." "I have peace," Eliza assured her. "Every morning when I wake up under this roof, every evening when I watch the sun set over land we built together, every moment with you girls and your families, that's peace." Later, alone in her bedroom, the same room she'd shared with Cole for so many years, Eliza sat by the window and looked out at the ranch. Lights glowed in the barn, where hands were finishing evening chores. Smoke rose from the bunkhouse chimney. In the distance, cattle lowed softly. She thought about the girl she'd been, desperate, grieving, lighting candles for ghosts. She thought about the woman she'd become, strong, capable, surrounded by love. She thought about Cole and how he'd seen her not as she was, but as she could be. "We did good, didn't we?" she whispered to the night. "Our girls are strong. The ranch is strong. The legacy lives on." For a moment, she could almost feel his presence, hear his voice saying what he always said. "Together." "Together," she agreed, smiling. "Always together." The next morning dawned clear and bright. Eliza rose early, as she always did, and started coffee before anyone else was awake. She stood on the porch with her cup, watching the sun break over the mountains, feeling the good ache of age in her bones and the contentment of a life well lived in her heart. A young ranch hand rode by, tipping his hat respectfully. "Morning, Mrs. Bridger." "Morning, Tom. Going to be a beautiful day." "Yes, ma'am. Every day on Bridger Creek Ranch is beautiful." He rode on, and Eliza smiled. The widow's daughter had become the rancher's wife, then the rancher's widow, and finally just Eliza, strong in her own right, defined not by loss, but by everything she'd built from it. She'd lit candles for the dead once, marking time by grief. Now she measured her days in sunrises and grandchildren's laughter, in horses breaking from the gate and cattle grazing in green pastures, in the solid earth beneath her feet and the endless sky above. The light she carried now wasn't for remembering those who'd gone. It was for celebrating those who remained and for illuminating the path forward for those who'd come after. And that light would never, ever go out. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale from. Are you listening at home, during your commute, or perhaps while working? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Eliza and Cole's journey? Your feedback means the world to us.